So I'm Flynn. I'm here to talk to you from the Linkerd project about Linkerd, mTLS, and the sad tale of bungled bundles, which is actually hard to even say. If you are not familiar with Linkerd, we are a service mesh. Our job is to add security, reliability, and observability to your entire application down at the platform level so that you do not have to change your application. The very first step of this is that we take over the network. And we use ultra-lightweight, ultra-fast Rust microproxies to go and inject mTLS into all of your meshed communications, which permits us a lot of interesting functionality. If you're familiar with mTLS, you will know that the basis of identity in mTLS is certificates. And in fact, our sad tale begins with a Linkerd user calling up to say that their certificates had expired and everything had gone up in flames. So, if you have gotten this far in Cloud Native without knowing anything else about certificates, first off, congratulations, I'm impressed. But also, there are a couple of things that you need to know about certificates to understand the rest of our sad tale of two different issues combining to cause misery. The first one is that for Linkerd to use a certificate, it has to be ultimately derived from a cert called a trust anchor, which lives in a trust bundle. The second thing that you need to know here is that, for example, if you've got this blue anchor, you have blue certificates, everything is well. This is good because Linkerd knows that it can trust those blue certificates in the mesh. To prevent these things from expiring, though, you have to rotate them or renew them. And if you need to do that to a trust anchor, you have to do something special. You start by generating a shiny new red trust anchor. Then you start rotating certificates down in the mesh. This transition state in the middle right now, this is fine. We've got red certs and blue certs in the mesh. We've got a red anchor and a blue anchor in the bundle. Everything is happy. Eventually, you have only red certs in the mesh, and then you can kick the blue bundle out. All is good. That brings us to our first of two problems. Turns out there were some old Linkerd docs that described a wrong way to do this rotation. They said to do the rotation this way. That does not work. Because now you have blue certs down in the mesh, but you only have a red cert in the bundle, and everything, again, goes up in flames. Now, a fair question would be, hey, did you guys not test the docs? Did you not notice that this was a problem? Yeah, we did test the docs. That brings us to our second problem. See, Linkerd does not by itself get to dictate organizational policy around rotating certificates. So instead, we work with other tools in the ecosystem, like Venafi Cert Manager, to actually, manage the certificates. That's what it does. It's pretty good at it. But it turns out that in Cert Manager prior to 1.18, when you asked it to rotate a certificate, what it did by default was to go through and update the validity dates of the cert without changing the certificate's private key. And in that case, you get something that looks like a different cert on the surface, but it's actually the same thing down under the hood. This was controlled by Cert Manager's rotation policy setting. The default was never prior to 1.18. In Cert Manager 1.18, they changed the defaults to always, which is great for security, because that means that when it rotates it, it will actually give it a new key. It's a new certificate. This is what we all expect to happen. Everybody was happy. Unfortunately, this is why the old docs worked. With Cert Manager prior to 1.18, the new cert that came in to replace the old one instead of living next to it was actually the same blue anchor. It just looked a little bit different because it had different dates. And everything worked great. And then our user upgraded to 1.18, and this happened, and everything went up in flames again. So first off, if you happen to run into this, I'm sorry. But also, the moral of this story is not that Cert Manager is horrible. It is not that Linkerd is terrible. It kind of is that certificates are awful, but we'll get to that later. No, the moral of this story is that we live in an ecosystem. All of us are working on projects that have to get along with other projects. To the extent that we can figure out ways to better streamline that part of working together, that pays massive dividends, everybody will be happier. Certainly going through this gave us, at the Linkerd project, a bunch of ideas about how we could make things better and more streamlined in Linkerd. If you have others, come on by and talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. We also, just as you may have seen, introduced Linkerd support for MCP. You can scan the QR code and try that out. It's pretty cool. But other than that, happy to talk to you. You can find me as Flynn on all the Slacks, or come by the Linkerd kiosk in the Project Pavilion. Thank you.